Oh, it's raining. It was supposed to rain after 10. My glasses just do a glare, so that's why I don't want to wear them. Also, I guess that's March 1st now. Okay. Sorry, I just put some gum in my mouth. And, I was gonna talk about. I'll sit down. um, I had a realization a while back about people and giving unsolicited advice. And it's like, I don't know how I got to this. It was like, it goes it's like assuming you see the same, like, a lot of people think that, why don't this person see it this way? You know, it's kind of like that meme that's like, it's a 6, no, it's a 9, and then there's two people are standing on either side, and to them, it's that actual number, but to the other, it's not. So it's like, okay, well, I used to not understand why people gave unsolicited advice, and why didn't they just listen? Why didn't they just do that? Well, then it's like, I had a realization about, I think it had something to do with my best friend. He doesn't do that, but like it was something else, and I can't quite remember. It doesn't matter, but it's like, I was like, wait, maybe the people that do that, that's the only way they know how to help. So they're not trying to not help. They're literally trying to, that's the only way, that's the only path, that's the only thing that they see, that's the only route they see to help. So now I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be able to handle it better. And now that I am, it doesn't really happen as much, or it's probably not going to bother me as much, hopefully, because I'm like, okay, I genuinely used to just hate it because it felt demanding, and it felt like, okay, but I'd be feeling invalidated, like, okay, well, you're not listening to me. And really, they were just, or, you know, they were just trying to help the best way that they knew how, and the best way that I know how. Because I'm not so good at the advice as much, so I just listen. So it's like, okay, but I also want that. But sometimes, usually only when I ask, I want the advice, or I don't know. Or maybe it's like also because I'm used to getting, like, when it's unsolicited advice, it's like, it just feels like a demand. I don't know, but I was like, I've just been having different realizations like that. Like, oh, it's something that should have been obvious. I guess you would think they'd be like, oh, but it's like not always that obvious. So it's like, I get it. And people do that. So hopefully I won't feel so defensive. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to, like, I felt like trying to tell me what to do and you're not listening, and like, I'm still trying to unravel it, and I'm tired. I just thought that was interesting. Just like, you look back in your life and you're like, why didn't I just skip all of that if it was just gonna be like this anyways? Like when with my best friend, when we were together, it was like, I feel like, well, maybe we shouldn't have, if we were just gonna end up like this and friends anyways, and I was just gonna end up alone, and I could have just stayed there where I was, and then I wouldn't have to go through all this. Where am I gonna, like, can I afford this? Because where I was living, I was paying it all on my own. I was able to. But it's like, well, did I see another route? No, I didn't. I took the path that I saw in front of me. So looking back, yeah, you can see more than one path, but you don't always, like, obviously hindsight is 2020, but it's like you don't do that, and you don't always, like, you have to go through shit sometimes just to realize, oh, and sometimes things just had to happen that way for whatever reason. Or sometimes it's just fucked up the way, like, especially with, like, abuse and stuff. But this wasn't abusive. I mean, like, it's just, like, more like, if we were just gonna end up like this, then why couldn't we have just skipped all the relationship part and just stayed friends and not lived together ever? Like, why? But no, it had to happen because that was my first non-toxic or, like, healthier, relationship ever. So it was like, for both of us, I guess, we both needed that at the time. It was what was needed at the time. Even if you outgrow it or whatever, or if it transforms into something else. So it's like, I really did need to be alone and heal like I am now. That was my foot on my shoe. But it's like, it wasn't time yet. And also, all that stuff had to happen just for many reasons. Like, I probably would still have my kids, or I don't know, like, what would happen. Like, maybe it just needed to happen that way. But at least I got to experience living in my own, like, actual house. Yeah, this is a house, but I mean, like, a house. Like, when I lived in Nebraska still, we lived in a house, and it was nice. I felt like a fucking grown-up, my dude. I was like, oh my god, I'm a grown-up. I mean, more than I feel like living in one of these, even though there's still a house, and even though apartments are still a home, everything. But 717, I just felt, I don't know. I think you'll understand what I mean, though. Like, it just felt like, oh, I'm getting somewhere, and then only to be like, oh, maybe I was supposed to rest for a bit, and then it's weird how life is. But you can look back and be like, oh, that's why that had to happen, or not, or like if it's something else, it's like, I still don't get why that happened. That's okay too. Like, you don't have to understand everything and why it happened, because literally, there's not a lesson in every fucking thing. But you can look back and be like, okay, those lessons, that makes sense, or whatever. So it does make sense. But that's why I was kind of probably where I got it from. Like, I started being like, oh, I can apply that to this. I can apply that to this. I'm just assuming that this is, like, the more you do that to yourself, that's why, like, you can't be, like, expecting somebody to be able to meet you more than they've met themselves. So, like, that's why they say that. It's actually rings pretty true. So if you are kind to yourself and forgiving yourself, or, like, showing yourself, like, hey, oh, I didn't see another path, and that's why I took this path, and that's why it looked like that. But now I do, because I've already traveled that path and learned the lesson or whatever. I can extend the same to sirens, other people, and be like, oh, they can be like that. But it doesn't always, obviously, don't extend them the great, like, don't, like, excuse their shitty behavior if it's shitty. Like, but I'm talking about stuff that's, like, harmless, like, unsolicited advice. Like, not all of it, obviously, but, like, stuff that's, like, when you're just, like, confiding in a friend and they're like, well, I don't know, just, you know what I mean? Like, take it how it resonates, but basically, yeah. Like, do no harm, but also take no shit. I believe that was actually Thunder, wasn't it? Like, I can't tell. I live by an army base, and they're always having bombs going off and shit. So, like, it's gonna be nice to get away from that, because it gets really old at times. I'm like, that's unnecessary.